To avoid that, okay. Makes sense. Very wise, actually.
I've never liked controversy, and Mom and Dad did quite a bit. You've probably heard the story about whose house was they supposed to be at in Topeka, and Mom and Dad didn't show up.
Was it Ella Marie's house? I think.
Maybe it was Ella Marie.
I think that's what you told me.
And the folks got to arguing and never showed up.
Really?
I can't handle controversy at all.
They did fuss a lot.
Well, they were very different people.
Yeah.
There's an understatement.
Right there.
My understated cousin Irene.
Mom and Dad fussed a lot at night.
Let's see, you was probably, how old was you when I got married? Something like, I got married
Somewhere
48. You,
around 9.
yeah. I know you came over and stayed overnight. I don't know if it was more than one night or not, but the next day you was ready to go home.
Probably too boring there.
That was when you were on Wanamaker.
Uh-huh. Well, there were no other kids, and there was nothing going on there, you know, it was pretty dull.
Well, you had to move the cattle.
So that's before Lee was
Move
born.
the cattle from one side of the road to the other to milk. To milk was, you had to move the cattle from one side of
Yeah.
the road to the next. And Floyd had pigs, and they would take a 100-pound sack. I don't know what was in it,
Whatever was
but
in
he
it, you know.
would carry that clear up the hill.
Uh-huh.
There,
We had to go up the hill to get our mail.
right. Willis ends up over there now, close
Might help.
to that. I don't remember what it was, or where it was exactly, but I could remember Floyd carrying that big old sack of stuff on his shoulder.
He was pretty strong back in the day.
Yes, he was.
Imagine moving milk cows from one side of Wanamaker to the other today. Probably wouldn't happen.
Splattered.
Yeah.
Floyd used to milk in that barn on the other side from the house was over here and the barn was on the other side of the road. And life was boring. I mean, I was there by myself if he was in the barn, so I'd go down to the barn and sit while he was milking. And he was eating an apple, or somebody was eating an apple. Anyway, the cow kicked and the apple come sailed past me. Oh, I'm telling you, talk about excitement.
You bet.
It was a run by fruiting.
He helped two, I think, by hand when we lived there.
You only had 2 cows there?
Well, yeah, we had two because my folks gave us one when we got married, and his folks gave us one. So the 2 cows was all we had
That's
at
an
that time.
awesome way
I,
to get.
I never heard
Is
that one
that-
before.
So apt.
Yeah.
The beginning of the dairy, huh?
So how many
2
did
cows.
you milk at the peak of the dairy?
20 some.
Oh, I think it was more than that.
Well, let me see.
I
When
think
we
he
put the milk
had
on-
40 at one time.
Really?
See, I can't remember. I know we had quite a few down there.
Yeah. That's probably the most. I think I could be wrong, but I think it was about 40.
I don't remember. I remember it was more with the milker than it had
Yeah.
been by. He was,
Yeah.
well, 12 or more by hand.
Well, I remember the one time the electricity went out, and it went out for like a week,
Oh my.
and he didn't want the cows to go dry, so he
Yeah.
so he had now he only milked them once a day instead of twice a day, but he milked like all 40 cows by hand, and then of course the cooler didn't work because electricity was out, so
It was wasted milk.
it was
But
wasted.
at least the
But he
cows
ca-
didn't go dry.
Right, but he called the company and they said, well, they couldn't take the sour milk, but they could take sour cream. So then we separated. We got one of those old milk separators and separated 400 gallons by hand.
Oh my lands. That was a lot of work, I
Yeah,
imagine.
I remember it was all night. We separated the milk. It was all night long, clear till morning.
See, I don't even remember that.
We had two of those little Jersey cows, and boy, they'd have little tits and you'd
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
milk those.
I said those have higher butter fat,
Yeah,
I
oh,
think, so you could
yeah,
strain off a lot of cream.
but it
on
wasn't
those.
all we had down here.
And
on
I don't know what
61st.
they do when they get a hold of the milk away from the farm. But I always thought that was the healthiest right there, from the cow to the table.
Yeah,
And when we were sick growing up and couldn't go to school, a lot of the time we'd end up sitting in the room where the milk tank was when Grandpa was milking them. And it seems like there were about 8 or 10 batches of cows that he would run in. I think he had, was it 4 that he hooked up to the machines, and then he milked one while they were being milked with the machines?
We could go up and count how many stanchions there are. I can't remember.
I think it was 5 in a batch, and that would make sense for about 40 if it was about 8 or 10
Right? Yeah.
batches
We
of cows
had-
coming
we
in.
built 6 of those stanchions down on 61st Street.
Hmm.
We built 6 of them. So we had to be milking 6 at least.
Now, how did you and Uncle Floyd meet?
Meat,
Mm-hmm.
high school.
Oh, that's right. I saw the yearbook,
Mhm.
the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, they were in the same class.
Now, didn't you meet really at the 8th grade examination where all the one-room schoolhouse kids would go and take the
Well, that was-
test?
Used to be you had to take a test to go from the 8th grade into high school. If you didn't get at least a 70 on that test, they wouldn't let you start high school. I never knew whose brainstorm that was, but
I don't know if they
anyway,
were good
I
idea.
barely made that.
So but what grade school did you go to?
Liberty,
And which one did Daddy go to?
6 Mile.
Did he? He went to 6 Mile.
Yeah, Floyd went to 6
Okay,
Mile.
we switched over to 6 Mile when they closed Liberty.
And I walked to school by myself every day. It was 3 miles
Well,
down
that
that long
wasn't
driveway.
any chore. That wasn't any chore when he lived up at Wilson. Because we cut across that field.
To Liberty School?
Yeah. And we'd have grass that tall, and I grabbed hold of it and cut my fingers. Something fierce for that slew grass.
That's a lot of hills, though.
Hmm.
Going from north of Auburn there into Auburn. A lot of big hills
Well,
up and down.
But they apparently lived, didn't you live like across the street, you said, from Liberty School?
From
Oh,
what-
from Liberty School,
Liberty
but didn't
School.
you walk to high school in Auburn, too?
Oh, that could be.
Yeah. When I went to high school, we lived at the dairy up on the hill. The school was down on the corner. But if you take the driveway, because it was a long driveway, and stretch it out, it would have made 3 miles straight going to Auburn.
But now you went to Auburn High School.
Mm-hmm.
But Uncle Bill, you went to Washburn Rural, didn't you?
Well, that
Yes.
was Mom and Dad's idea. The boys were more important. They had to go to Washburn so they'd get a better education.
Why was it a better education?
I have no idea, but
Could have been,
I
like,
thought at the time
wrong.
that is absolutely ridiculous, but that was their decision, and so the boys went to Washburn and the girls went to Auburn.
I thought we went for athletics.
Of course you did, Daddy. You loved athletics.
Well, you talked about Ella Marie being good with basketball, but you told me before that you could hit the basket every time. You'd take it down between your legs and toss it up, and it would always
That
go in
was
the
from
basket.
See, I went to Washburn High School my sophomore year. My folks, Dad was always different jobs. And so when I was a sophomore, I went to Washburn High School, and that's what I waited. And they didn't have a lot of school buses then. The one was they'd take the route, and then they'd come back and get another load. And while they was come in the first load, I'd be down the gymnasium shooting the basket. I'd do my homework first, and then so by the time I got home, then I had my exercise and I had my homework done.
Do you have a glass of water in there?
Water.
Mary Lou's gonna
I'll
get
get
you
it, I'll
one,
get it.
hon.
And that picture that we have of Thanksgiving at the Hestands,
Yeah,
was Bill there, or was that before he was born?
that was before he was born. That Carl
Okay.
was the baby.
Carl was in that.
There you go.
Thank you.
Where'd Frog go? He's playing with the kids. I
Well, he
think.
went to investigate the whole thing about they think they saw a deer blind or something over there. I
But he
don't know.
took James. All the others are outside. Aiden and Lydia are outside.
Aiden and Lynn went up to the barn.
Oh yeah.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Which one's James?
He's the second from the youngest.
Okay.
Anybody ready to eat? I guess
Sure.
there's food out there.
His
Yeah,
food
we'll
should be
eat.
till Frog comes back.
No, he can find food.
Nah.